Imagine the sting of salt spray whipping your face. The last familiar sensation you may ever know. You're 17, teetering on your island's jagged coast, as the world you cherished crumbles in an instant. The men dragging you bark clipped, alien tongues. Their coarse laughter echoes like hounds in a kennel. Thick ropes bite into your wrists, while behind you, smoke billows from your village's ruins, scorching your throat. A funeral pyre for the life just extinguished. No longer a daughter or friend, you are now a prize, a spoil of war. And this is merely the first step on a path darker than your young mind can fathom. This was the Viking Age, spanning from the late 700s to the mid-11th century. We envision bold explorers, ferocious raiders, master shipwrights, sagas, dragon-proed vessels, the legendary Lindisfarne assault. Yet beneath this heroic sheen and the mythical horned helmets they never wore lurks a harsher truth. For centuries, the Norse economy thrived on a vast, disciplined, and chilling human trade network. Slavery was no mere byproduct of plunder. It was often the prime objective, the richest bounty a raid could yield. From the rocky shores of the British Isles to the Slavic East's dense forests, thousands of women were seized, stripped of their names, and sold into bondage. This is no sensational fiction spun for shock value. Its history pieced together from Viking law codes, monks' stark and devastating chronicles, graves and ship burials exhumed from peat and soil, and the dispassionate observations of Arab envoys who bartered with Norse merchants. If raw, unvarnished history captivates you, subscribe and comment below. Tell us where you're tuning in from. Now, let's peer into the machinery that fueled this trade. Above all, it operated as a ruthless system. Raids as enterprise, chaos masquerading as commerce. Popular tales depict raids as tempests of anarchy. In reality, they were calculated ventures. Business, not brawls. Raiding fleets were investor-backed operations, a local chieftain or a filag syndicate. Partners bound by silver and ambition. Pooled resources to commission or equip a ship. Timber for hulls, iron nails and rivets, woolen sailcloth, tar-sealed seams, provisions for the crew. Each demanded substantial capital. Investors craved returns, and the surest profit was human cargo. Their vessels were engineering marvels, optimized for this grim commerce. Shallow, draft snakejaws or larger gnars skimmed open seas, yet glided deep into rivers, evading guards to strike at unsuspecting heartlands. Inland settlements 100 miles from the coast might awaken to dark silhouettes on the water, escape already severed. This art of ambush rendered slave raiding devastatingly efficient. Targets were meticulously selected. Historians, soft targets, monasteries, proved especially lucrative. In 806 at Iona, Norse warriors slaughtered 68 monks and hauled off captives. These sites offered more than chalices and embroidered vestments. They sheltered literate clergy and terror-stricken villagers. The annals of Ulster record calamity after calamity with icy brevity. 821 entry details a Wexford raid where raiders carried off a great host of women. The phrase recurs relentlessly. This was no sporadic cruelty. It was the business model. Descent into thrall. The erasure of identity once seized, a woman's identity evaporated. No longer daughter, wife, or sister, she became a thrall, the Old Norse term for slave. The very language betrayed the dehumanization. Legal texts cataloged thralls alongside oxen or sheep in farm inventories as fa, meaning both cattle and wealth. Under Norse law, a thrall was no legal person but chattel. Rightless, she could be beaten or slain by her master without repercussion. Iceland's Grágis Code decreed a thrall's testimony worthless. She could own no significant property or enter lawful marriage. Her children inherited the same fetters, perpetuating the cycle. Free women's lives were buffered by fines and honor codes, a thrall's by nothing. The plunge began the instant she was marched from home. Captives, roped in chains, trudged miles to beaches where sleek longships awaited. Herded aboard amid stolen goods and armed men, they endured weeks, long voyages. Envision it, dozens of shivering forms crammed into a 70 or 80-foot open hull, lashed by frigid spray, rationed to meager scraps of food and water. Disease spread like wildfire, terror gnawed at all. Many perished en route. For survivors, the ordeal persisted. Slave markets, bustling, merciless hubs, dotted Viking domains, weaving a web from Ireland and Britain to Scandinavia and beyond. Dublin, Norse Dyflin, emerged as Europe's infamy, shrouded clearinghouse, where island captives were auctioned and dispersed into forced labor. From there, women might fetch for Norse, Irish settlers, ship back to Scandinavia, or venture to nascent colonies like Iceland and the Faroes. The trade's tendrils extended farther. Vital markets pulsed at Hidaby on the modern German, Danish border and Birka, a thriving emporium on Sweden's Lake Mälaren Isle. These eastern portals linked the Norse realm to Russia's and Ukraine's great river routes. Along the storied Volga corridor, Western raid captives, and far more from Eastern Slavic villages, the Sakaliba of Arab chroniclers, funneled south to the Byzantine Empire and the resplendent Abbasid Caliphate. The commerce's scale defies comprehension. The 10th century Persian geographer Ibn Rusta described the Rus-eth, Norsemen, without flinching, settled along these rivers. They attack the Sakaliba, seize them, carry them to Khazaran and Bulgar, and sell them there. A girl snatched from an English hamlet might trudge to Dublin, trade to another merchant, cross the Baltic to Birka, then endure a grueling Volga or Dnieper trek, only to resell in Constantinople or Baghdad for Arab silver, silks, and spices. No conjecture here. Archaeology yields mountains of proof. Tens of thousands of Islamic dirhams litter Scandinavia, especially Gotland, the network's key nexus. These hordes of clipped and bent silver whisper of a booming Norse Caliphate alliance, where the North's premier export wasn't furs or amber, but living souls. At these bazaars, any shred of dignity was stripped bare. Handled like livestock, women endured public indignities. Arab envoy Ahmad ibn Fadlan, encountering Rus traders on the Volga in the 900s, chronicled a riverbank market where captives were arrayed in rows. A trader might openly consort with a slave girl under a companion's gaze. No veils, no shame. It was Dominion's brazen theater, a sales tactic to demonstrate value. Her body, a commodity on display. Endless toil and deeper violations post-sale, a woman's fate hinged on her buyer's whims. The most common. Relentless soul-crushing drudgery. As thrall, she bore the heaviest domestic burdens. The indoor work. Rising before dawn, collapsing after dusk, her days blurred into grinding grain on querns until teeth dulled, hauling water from icy streams, stoking longhouse hearths, brewing ale, cooking, laundering sodden woolens in frigid rivers. Textiles were vital, yielding vadmal, the coarse wool fabric propping the Norse economy. Shearing, washing, carding, spinning, weaving, each grueling step rested on enslaved women's hands. Norse poetry captured the toll. Rigsula, mythologizing social strata, depicts thralls with gnarled fingers, leathern skin, and throbbing joints, a poetic yet brutally vivid portrait of unyielding labor. Science corroborates. Viking-era skeletal analyses reveal low possession burials, likely slaves, marred by malnutrition, dietary poverty, and bones strained by overuse, a mute ledger of privation. Yet toil was no finale. Exploitation delved deeper for many sexual servitude. This facet of Viking life is often sanitized or sidelined, but sources brook no doubt. Lacking legal personhood, a female thrall's body was her owner's absolute domain. Usable at will, deemed a right, not a crime. Icelandic sagas, penned centuries later, echo the norm plainly. Potent men claimed enslaved women as free law, concubines, in overt household arrangements. Laxti La Saga recounts Irish Princess Melkorka, raid, captured as a legend, says Tungelis. Bought in Norway by chieftain Echskoldr Dalla, Coulson, and ferried to Iceland as concubine. Royal, born and mother to his favored son, Olaf the Peacock, her status remained thrall. Offspring, Ferluba Ron, navigated precarious limbo weaker, claims than free, wife heirs, they might gain manumission and acknowledgement, or paternal rejection into bondage. This bred longhouse tensions, lawful wives sharing space with enslaved concubines. For the women it offered scant shield. Norse custom viewed them as property foremost. This sexual dominion, so ingrained and essential to Viking expansion, inscribed itself in the North Atlantic's genetic tapestry. Modern DNA, from meticulously documented Iceland, unveils a stark asymmetry. Roughly 4/5 of Y chromosomes trace to Norse male settlers, yet over 60% of maternal mitochondrial DNA hails from Gaelic realms, chiefly Ireland and Scotland. The data is unequivocal. Iceland's founders were chiefly Scandinavian men who forcibly conveyed Celtic women overseas. Amid relentless British Isles plundering, voluntary migration strains credulity. They mothered a nation, arriving in irons, their legacy, borne by Icelanders today, silent testament to seizure, driven mass relocation and coerced intimacy. Alternate fates, ransom, ritual, and oblivion for a few, paths diverged, noblewomen, princesses, kings' spouses or daughters, commanded value as bargaining chips over servants or bedmates. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle and kin records detail Viking lords holding highborn women or clerics to extort vast silver, gold, or territory from anguished kin. These hostages endured ceaseless dread, pawns in era's perilous diplomacy, guarded by the very raiders who torched their homes and felled their blood. Ransom, however, wasn't the bleakest route. One incomprehensible end fused Norse rite with dominance and violence, ritual sacrifice. Archaeology and texts affirm human offerings, with enslaved women prime victims. The most visceral account returns to Ahmad ibn Fadlan. In 922, traversing the Volga, he witnessed a mighty Rus chieftain's funeral. Ceremony required a thrall woman to volunteer for death, bound for afterlife service. A farce, as refusal was impossible. Ibn Fadlan details a tent-day horror. The girl, clad in finery, plied with strong drink, urged to sing mournful airs, toured tents for ritual unions with the dead lord's retainers. Post-act, each bade her, "Tell your master I did this from love." On the Finale, the chieftain's corpse lay on a beached ship. Dazed by a final draught, she boarded under the Angel of Death, an aged crone executioner, who positioned her beside the body, looped a noose around her neck, and passed ends to two men. As they tightened, the hag plunged a broad blade repeatedly into the girl's ribs. Her shrieks drowned in warrior's shield. Thuds. A ploy to steel other thralls against flinching at their master's passing. The ship then blazed, ferrying lord and sacrifice to eternity. Ibn Fadlan's tale, harrowing as it is, rings true. Viking graves hint at retainer slayings. Norway's Flakstad burial holds multiples, one decapitated, arrayed submissively beside a high-status woman. The famed Oseberg ship grave yields two females, one elder, elite, the other young, her bones etched with hardship and lowly rank. Scholars posit her a thrall, offered to escort her mistress beyond. Such discoveries affirm a sobering verity. For raids seized women, existence might conclude not just in toil or violation, but as master's chattel even in death. A final gory emblem of his prestige on the afterlife voyage. Society's norm slavery as the bedrock most disquieting. How mundane it all seemed to Norse eyes. Enslaved folk anchored economy and order, a chieftain's prestige, tallied not solely in lands, silver, or warships, but thrall tallies. Sagas. The lore preserving their legends. Treat bondage as existential bedrock, not moral lapse. Slavery was woven into culture's warp, powering conquest and colonization. Behind every saga hero or wayfarer loomed unnamed women, their tales seldom inked, abducted mothers, concubines, servants, occasional sacrifices. Their labor wove textiles sustaining outposts. Their bodies birthed generations. Some even shared captives. Honest reckoning with the Viking Age demands confronting these muted lives. The covert toll of empire and renown. Dragon-prode grandeur and dauntless raider yarns can't obscure that for merry-eyed women, the Viking world was a cage. Escape via death or rare ransom alone. No culture racked by self, reproach over brutality, exploitation so ingrained few queried it. Freedom flickered. A steep, slender trail, manumission. Owners might reward longevity or bequeath liberty in wills. Denmark's Hidibai runestone lauds Smith Toki honoring X. Master Thorgils for gold and emancipation. Such yarns endure for rarity, not routine. For most captive women, bondage spanned lifetimes, chaining progeny. This order's demise crept in via politics and faith's currents. As Scandinavia Christianized in the 10th, 11th centuries, the Church frowned on enslaving co-religionists. Slavery endured, pivoting to pagan Slavs and Balts. Gradually, Viking absolutism softened to medieval serfdom's coercive ties. Yet unchecked trade bloomed for centuries. Epilogue. Exploitation's unyielding truth. The Viking Age lays bare exploitation's uncomfortable mechanics. Women's seizure and enslavement weren't rogue fringes. They were economic engines, ascent ladders, societal sanctions. Scandinavia's silver hoards, timber halls alive with feasts, audacious odysseys to Iceland, Greenland, even North America, all drew vigor from pilfered labor and pilfered flesh. True comprehension demands the full vista. Marvel at shipwright mastery, but recall the women who spun and wove its sails wool. Laud warrior ferocity, yet envision terrified girls herded onto longships. Cherish sagas literary brilliance, but scan lines for casual cruelty's thread. Vikings' toll on captives isn't shadowy trivia. It's a case study in societal normalization of dehumanization. It illustrates how swiftly humans morphed to merchandise worked, traded, discarded when spent. Evidence encircles us. Victim chronicles, thrall, codifying laws, living DNA, soil, scattered bones. A stark audit of slavery's Norse dominion. The iconic Viking, free spirit, untamed and unbound, is half the tale. That liberty rode the unfreeze backs. Anguish of the village, snatched. Ocean-crossed choice, stripped. Runes and Saga's trumpet triumphs, but truer legacy etches quieter ledgers. The mute witness of women whose toil ignited trade, suffering bankrolled quests, lives devoured to exalt others. Their largely voiceless sagas are vital to any candid Norse portrait. Gazing at the Viking Age means beholding innovation and valor, yes, but also a dominion machine that forged human lives into raw ore. Beneath longships, romance simmers a forsaken reality. Countless women whose freedom, toil, and very breath were requisitioned to erect an empire of sails and servitude.